liberal people, who think the left has gone a little mad with trans issues. Some have expressed that opinion with literary sophistication, like J.K. Rowling. Some by getting big laughs, like Dave Chappelle. And some are downright ugly about it, like Linehan. But ugly is the price of a freedom so great as speech. Get this, Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really, Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you on stage, you get 72 virgins. And Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak and England might arrest him, I would have said, what are you smoking?
If you think the attacks on J.K. Rowling and free speech are dying down, think again. In recent weeks, a new wave of outrage has hit the Harry Potter author louder, sharper, and more relentless than ever. Enter Bill Maher, a steadfast defender of free expression, dismantling their arguments with razor-sharp logic, biting wit, and perfectly timed humor. Hit subscribe and let's dive into the debate.
Was that the most powerful witch hunters now were coming from Twitter, the Ivy League, and the progressive left. J.K. Rowling used to be a villain to the right because she wrote books about witchcraft. Now she's a villain to the left because she has the crazy belief that there's more to being a woman than pronouns and lipstick. So that was the point of the evening. How do we take a stand against cancel culture?
Ma begins by explaining why the attacks on J.K. Rowling have suddenly intensified. In his view, nothing about her position has changed, except one inconvenient reality. She refuses to back down. Rowling continues to stand by her belief that biological sex matters, that it has real implications for women's sports and women's spaces, and that these issues deserve open, honest discussion rather than being declared untouchable. In today's cultural climate, Ma argues that stance alone is treated as unacceptable. As a result, online activists have once again escalated cancellation efforts, hoping that enough outrage, insults, and coordinated pressure will eventually push her into silence. Ma, however, isn't persuaded. Instead of condemning Rowling, he praises her resolve, emphasizing how rare it has become for a public figure to endure sustained abuse and still refuse to recant. To Ma, Rowling represents something increasingly endangered, a person willing to take the blows, hold her position, and speak her mind, even when the crowd demands total compliance.
There's plenty of non-crazy people, liberal people, who think the left has gone a little mad with trans issues. Some have expressed that opinion with literary sophistication, like J.K. Rowling. Some by getting big laughs, like Dave Chappelle. And some are downright ugly about it, like Linehan. But ugly is the price of a freedom so great as speech. Trump tried to disappear someone for writing an anti-Israel op-ed in a student newspaper, which I found offensive, but I still would go to the mat for that person to be able to print it. And we can fight Trump on this because we have a First Amendment.
Over the past decade, countless people have paid a heavy price simply for expressing their views, and many continue to do so today. Careers have stalled or collapsed, reputations have been damaged, and livelihoods disrupted by online outrage and public shamming. Ma warns that this is a dangerous path for any society to follow. In his view, people should be able to voice their opinions without living in constant fear of professional or social destruction. Free speech, he argues, only has meaning when it protects unpopular, uncomfortable, and dissenting views, not just those that are widely accepted or socially approved. That doesn't mean all speech is harmless or immune from criticism. Some words can be offensive, reckless, or even criminal. But Ma draws a firm distinction. When speech crosses into illegality, it is the responsibility of the legal system, not online mobs, to address it. Justice should be administered through courts and due process, not viral outrage campaigns driven by moral posturing and public condemnation.
The individuals and organizations who others have tried to silence and who answered, "That's not a rule." Our first award goes to the president of my alma mater, Cornell University, Martha Pollack. This month, students there demanded trigger warnings before all the lectures in case any of the adult subjects you specifically went to college to learn about came up. And Martha said, "Yeah, no, we're not doing that." She didn't cave in. or hire a new dean of sensitivity. She just said, no, college is for introducing you to new ideas, not for kissing your ass and making you feel wonderful and always right.
Interestingly, J.K. Rowling wasn't the only public figure caught in cancel culture's crosshairs. Ma also pointed to the case of a Cornell University lecturer who refused to place free speech beneath the demands of student sensitivity. When pressured to censor language labeled offensive, the lecturer stood his ground, arguing that discomfort is not the same as harm and that universities exist to challenge ideas, not shield students from them. Invoking the First Amendment, he bluntly reminded students that encountering words they dislike is part of living in a free society. College, he argued, is not a refuge from reality but preparation for it. Predictably, backlash followed. Critics demanded apologies, resignations, and disciplinary action. Ma, however, firmly sided with the lecturer, praising his refusal to bend. To Ma, the episode perfectly illustrates a broader campus problem: a generation taught that personal offense outweighs constitutional principles, and that silencing speech is mistakenly framed as a moral triumph.
Trader Joe's, who for years have been selling a line of ethnically themed products, trading on the name Joe. For example, they have Trader Jose's beer. So, of course, one teenager on Twitter heard the word Jose and said it was racist, and then there was a petition, and then Trader Joe's management did the right thing. They burnt down all their stores. No, they didn't. They said, you oversensitive little shit.
Cancel culture is no longer focused solely on individuals. It has increasingly turned its attention toward institutions and entire corporations. The moment a company strays from the latest version of woke orthodoxy, the outrage machine roars to life. Hashtags begin trending, boycott threats emerge, and activists demand public apologies and symbolic acts of repentance. For a long time, this strategy worked almost perfectly. Companies would rush to comply, issuing statements, firing employees, and launching vague internal reviews in hopes of calming the storm. But Ma argues that something important has begun to change. The fear is slowly wearing off. More companies are realizing that surrender never truly appeases the mob, it only encourages the next attack. Instead of panicking, some organizations are choosing to stand firm, refusing to apologize for imagined offenses or abandon their values under pressure. This growing backbone represents a subtle but meaningful cultural shift. When institutions stop rewarding outrage, the power of cancellation weakens and the mob is left, for once, shouting into the void.
Germany, a guy called a politician a Pimmel, which is the German word for, and it triggered a police raid. What a Pimmel move. A guy from North Yorkshire in Britain faced 2 years in prison for wearing a Halloween costume depicting the terrorist who bombed the Ariana Grande concert. Bad taste? Yeah, bad taste is the whole point of Halloween.
You might assume the United States is the worst offender when it comes to restricting free speech, until you look beyond its borders. What's happening around the world puts the issue into sharp perspective. In many countries, speaking freely isn't just controversial, it's genuinely dangerous. Even across parts of Europe, speech laws are tightening, with people fined, investigated, or arrested for saying the wrong thing online. In much of Asia, the limits are even stricter. Criticizing the government, questioning official narratives, or challenging authority can bring severe consequences. In some regimes, dissent doesn't merely cost you a job or social standing, it can cost you your freedom or worse. Journalists and activists often face harsh punishment, while ordinary citizens learn to censor themselves simply to survive. Ma's point is simple but unsettling. Free speech is rare, fragile, and easily lost. Once a society decides certain opinions are too dangerous to be heard, it's already well on its way to silencing everyone.
This Scottish man was found guilty of hate speech for a YouTube video where he taught his pug to salute when he said Sieg Heil.
Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil!
Elon Musk watched it and said, I don't see it. But, you know, Musk, Kanye, this dog, they're all wrong, and they all have the right to be wrong.
Ma delivers a blunt message to the perpetually outraged crowd, one they rarely want to hear. People, he argues, have the right to be wrong and, more importantly, the right to say things others strongly disagree with. That isn't a weakness of free speech. That is the very definition of it. Ma stresses that disagreement is not violence, discomfort is not danger, and being offended is not the same as being oppressed. Yet modern outrage culture increasingly treats all three as identical. He warns that the moment individuals believe their personal values should be imposed on everyone else, free expression begins to collapse. No person or group, Ma insists, should have the authority to police language, decide which opinions are acceptable, or silence opposing views simply because they dislike them. A genuinely free society doesn't require agreement, it requires tolerance, especially for ideas we find unpleasant. Without that tolerance, Ma argues, what remains isn't justice or progress but a fragile culture sustained by fear, conformity, and enforced silence.
Now considering the so-called pub law. Okay, it's not just about pubs. It's a workplace bill aimed at preventing any kind of harassment in the workplace, including verbal remarks overheard. Okay, problem is, a pub is a workplace. So is a bookstore. Would a major chain like Waterstones risk hosting a book signing by a controversial author like J.K. Rowling? And pubs? People go to pubs for two reasons: to drink and to exercise their inalienable right to talk.
The woke movement and cancel culture often refuse to accept is a basic human truth. Silencing people doesn't eliminate their beliefs, it compresses them. When individuals are denied the ability to express their views openly, that pressure doesn't fade away. It builds quietly, becoming more resentful, more extreme, and more unstable over time. Ma argues that people need an outlet, a space to breathe and speak honestly without the constant fear of punishment or social exile. Open expression functions like a pressure valve. It allows bad ideas to be challenged, criticized, mocked, or dismantled in the open, rather than allowed to fester in private echo chambers. When that outlet is removed, those suppressed opinions don't suddenly become more reasonable. Instead, they harden. Eventually, they can erupt in harmful ways, fueling extremism, social unrest, or outright backlash. History repeats this lesson again and again. Suppression does not create unity or harmony, it breeds resentment. Free speech, however uncomfortable or chaotic it may be, remains the safest and most effective release mechanism a society has.
And in the House of Lords, they're in a bar called the Drunken Cock. Any Brit will tell you the food is awful, the weather's, but at least you can call each other a cunt. And now that's gone? It's like making a rule at the dog park: no ass sniffing.
Ma argues that Britain in particular needs to dial back its aggressive policing of speech and allow people to express their views openly. Suppressing speech, he says, doesn't eliminate dangerous ideas, it simply pushes them out of sight. When people are free to speak, society gains a clearer understanding of what they truly think, feel, and believe, and that visibility is crucial. Ma suggests that open expression can function as an early warning system, helping societies identify real threats before they grow into serious problems. People rarely act without first revealing their intentions through words. Completely separating thought from speech is nearly impossible. When expression is driven underground, authorities are left in the dark, forced to respond only after harm has already occurred. Free speech, messy and uncomfortable as it may be, allows patterns to emerge, grievances to be aired, and warning signs to surface early. In Ma's view, protecting open expression isn't reckless or dangerous. It's preventative, practical, and ultimately far safer than enforced silence, which only breeds confusion, resentment, and delayed consequences.
Get this, Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really, Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you on stage, you get 72 virgins. And Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak and England might arrest him, I would have said, "What are you smoking?"
Ironically, even some countries long known for tightly policing free speech are beginning to soften their position. There's a growing recognition, even within highly controlled societies, that open expression is not the danger it was once believed to be. Ma highlights Saudi Arabia as a compelling example. The kingdom's decision to welcome outspoken comedians, performers famous for pushing boundaries, speaking candidly, and poking fun at social norms, signals a subtle but meaningful shift in attitude. Comedy thrives on honesty, exaggeration, and discomfort. By allowing this kind of expression, these societies are acknowledging that laughter and critique do not automatically lead to disorder or collapse. Instead, they can coexist with stability. What makes this moment especially striking, Ma observes, is the contrast it creates on the global stage. While some traditionally restrictive nations are cautiously opening the door to freer expression, many Western countries appear to be moving in the opposite direction, tightening speech rules and treating dissent with increasing caution. The historical irony is impossible to overlook. The societies that once proudly championed free speech now seem uneasy with it, while others are slowly beginning to recognize its value. And with that, we've reached the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content like this.